I made a big snafu with planning the build of this truck. I made an assumption based on prior knowledge without actually fact checking stuff, which that always bites you in the butt. I counted the bolts on this rear axle, and there were 10. So I said, hey, it's a GM 10 bolt. Looked it up. Very popular for this era C10. No big deal. Ordered everything for a 10 bolt. Come to find out, it is not a 10 bolt. It is a Dana 44, which they didn't run many of, and they're a six bolt axle. And originally, when Mike and I were planning this build, we had talked about putting a different rear end in this thing to prepare for the LS swap in the future. There's a silver lining here. I ended up scoring this brand new pre-owned 12 bolt for $400, which to put new 5-lug axles in this Dana 44 would have, in this other axle, would have been about $300. So for $100 more, we get a much beefier axle and just get more upgradability in the future, which is always good when you're starting a build. It's relatively bolt-in. I did a bunch of measuring. I measured the spring perches side to side. They look like they are in the exact same location as the ones on the other axle. Yeah, we're gonna eat. Got my munchkins with me today, and they are hungry. I also measured from the center point of the pinion to where the U-joint seats in the yoke, and it's the exact same distance, so I don't think we'll have to shorten the drive shaft at all. Originally, I wanted to mock the disc brakes up out of the truck, but now I think it's going to be almost a direct bolt-in that I want to get it in just to see what it looks like and see if I need to make any alterations. And if I have to cut and weld brackets, I can do that out of the truck. Yeah, we're going to eat. Yeah, we'll eat. So I am going to work on getting the old axle pulled out and the new one stripped down, and we'll slam this thing in the truck. But first, it's snack time. I think everyone's well nourished enough to keep slamming away on this thing just in time for the fan to kick on. So hopefully you can hear me talking. I'm gonna have to get the torches and grinders out to strip the old axle down while the kids aren't here. They're pretty good with loud noises, but I don't want to blow a lot of dust and debris in the air when they're in here. So I think we're just gonna hop right to it and zap the U-bolts off, pull the leaf springs. I'm gonna be bouncing back and forth between stripping the new rear end down. I don't want to go super crazy with it until I know it will definitely fit in the condition it's in. But I gotta torch the bolts off for the shocks because those are all seized up. And I'm pretty pumped about that because any day I get to cut metal with fire, I'm a pretty happy boy. The rear axle that's in the truck shouldn't be too much of a problem coming out. The e-brake cable clips are seized and will not come out of their holes, so I think I'm just going to grind the e-brake off. I wanted to keep it as complete as possible in case someone wanted to swap this into something. I don't like to mutilate stuff that people might be able to use, but that's the only part that we're going to have to probably snip. I'm going to put them both on jack stands side by side to double check the measurements. I did a rough measurement with the axle in the truck and this one out, and I think they're going to be really close. From what I understand, this 12 bolt is about, I think maybe close to 2 inches or maybe 2.5 inches wider than the rear axle that's in this truck. But it looks like the spring mounting pads are exactly the same center to center, which is good. Still don't know about the U-joint. Hoping the U-joint just bolts right up so I don't have to get a conversion U-joint or anything like that. All right, let's start playing with fire, baby. All right, new plan of attack. That's just smoldering. It's not on fire. New plan of attack. I'm just going to grind the bases of the shocks off. I cannot believe how stuck in there those bolts are. I don't even know if those shock mounts are going to work for this application. I'm probably going to have to cut them off and get new and fabricate different shock mounts for this anyways. I don't want to put a lot of time into preserving these ones, so I'm just going to take a grinder and hack the base of the shock off so we can move this around a little easier. Okay, I got the old axle out and the new one slid forward. But now that I've got them side by side like this, I want to double check all the measurements before I go through the work of sliding it back under there and getting it bolted up. I want to mock this up and bolt up in as few steps as possible. One major thing that I need to check right now, and I'll show you a little trick to check that while you have axles out of the truck, is the pitch of the spring perches in relationship to the yoke where the drive shaft bolts up. So I've done this before on other projects where I wasn't sure if I was going to have pinion angle issues, if I had swapped a different axle in from a slightly different vehicle. And the trick that I used was to find a little magnetic angle finder like this. These are dirt cheap. I actually busted mine a while ago, so I had to buy a new one the other day, and this one was probably 25 bucks. So I'll stick the magnet on the snout of the snout, maybe is that what you call it? Who knows? Someone will correct me. On the snout of the pinion, and I'll try to set that roughly to straight up and down, and I'll set that to exactly where the old one is, and then I'll check and I'll set this flat on. I'll video all this stuff. I'll set this flat onto the perches to make sure those two angles are exactly the same. I'm not too crazy concerned about them being exactly the same because I want to go through and check the pinion angle once we get our new wheels and tires on and everything's sitting on its own weight and we're sitting at ride height. I want to double check the pinion angle anyways, and they make little shims that you can put in there on a leaf. They make shims for a leaf setup that you can adjust pinion angle. I don't know if they'll work for this, but if I have to cut the spring perches and re-weld them, not a big deal. I'm going to double check the measurements. I'll get some closer up shots of where I'm placing this, and we'll double check everything, and then we'll get ready to slide and fit up the new axle. It's hard to get a decent camera angle on this, even with my GoPro, so I'll get you in a little bit closer here. You can see, oh, the screen just went dark. You can see I have it, again, on the flat part of the snout of the pinion, and I set these both to 90 degrees upright, perfectly plumb, and now I'll set this, nice little green screen, on each of the spring perches and make sure they match or are really damn close. And if they are, then we should be good to go. And the only thing that I'll have to cut and weld will be new shock mounts, which I kind of knew that was going to have to happen anyways. All right, thanks to this little guy, we know the hell that noise was. The battery just died on my GoPro. Thanks to this little guy, we know that the spring perch pitch, yes, nailed it, is exactly the same. The width is the same. This baby's ready to get bolted in. The only other thing I don't know, and I just decided to wait to see if it'd bolt up, is the U-joint, but I'm not too concerned about that. They make good conversion U-joints, or we can throw a different yoke on it, maybe, don't know. Not too worried about that. Well, I've got the axle out. I want to go ahead and pull one of the rear shackles. I've had a heck of a time finding shackle bushings for this thing. I think I'm just going to have to find the exact inside diameter measurement and the width and all that stuff. Worst case, I don't want to do it, but they make a two-part epoxy chemical type stuff. It's not epoxy, but it's you can make your own bushing material and just find a bushing tube, which this already has it in it. And do I really want to do that? No. I hope I can find one. I should be able to find one, though. There's, they've made millions and millions of different vehicles with leaf springs. There should be an option. Oh, and another thing. I don't know if you saw in the C-notch video, I ground down, let me get the piece. I ground down this bracket to fit up inside the, trying to make this not sexual. I ground down this bracket so it would fit up inside the spring perches of the Dana 44, which I thought was a GM 10 bolt. Again, if you're gonna make a mistake on the internet, make sure you do it on the internet where everyone's watching. So I may have to put some weld material on here and widen this back out. I don't know yet. I don't think this is the piece that actually centers the axle. I think it's where the U-bolts mount. I think U-bolts mount tightly to the leaf spring perch, and that's what centers it side to side. I don't know. I want to make a good side-to-side measurement anyway once it gets bolted up, because no matter how tight all this stuff is, you can still have stuff a little wonky. Again, enough chatting at you. I'm going to get back to it here. I'll talk at you quickly while I can before my heater fires up. Back in she goes. I got that shackle out to check the bushing, and I fit the little saddle dinguses, I guess we'll call them dinguses, up beneath the spring perches. I don't think I'll have to add any weld to those. They look pretty good. They look pretty centered. So here we go to fight the good fight. Okay, that went pretty smoothly. You can tell I've had this in and out 1,000 times because I'm getting faster and faster. Whatevs. The good news is everything lined up on the leaf spring. I've got to clean the threads up for the U-bolts. I think the threads were boogered up when they were shipped, like just had some sort of material from being plated on them, and I just hammered it home with the impact because I do foolish things like that. But this time I'm going to clean the threads up. So I'm going to clean those up. Then we'll get the U-bolts loose fit in and hook up the drive shaft. And then after that, we finally have something fun and exciting and not just a repeat stuff like this. So bear with me. A good thing to invest in, no matter how big a project you have, whether you're just changing oil, whatever it is, it's really smart to have a tap and die set and a thread chaser kit laying around, because little stuff like this could have been a huge inconvenience, but I have the right tools to straighten the threads out and clean them up. And they did get banged up in shipping and had a few flat spots in the threads that, again, I just hammered home with the impact, which you shouldn't do, but whatever, it is what it is. These two kits can keep you from pulling your hair way out, and I'll show you in other parts of this project. Once I start aligning the new sheet metal again, I go through and I retap all the holes, wire wheel the hardware. That way, when it comes time to reassemble the truck, I'm not putting garbage, rusty hardware into a rusty hole. And a year from then, if I have to take it apart to do something, snapping bolts off and drilling them out with brand new paint, it's just insane to do stuff like that. So take the extra, well, this will probably take me like 20 minutes to clean this up, but clean your threads up and you will be really happy the next time around. All right, I got this bad boy snugged up. Everything's not sitting perfectly in terms of the U-joints. I'm not too worried about that right now. This is just a mock-up. And right now everything looks pretty good. I want to do you can see it, that yellow clamp there. I want to do the U-joint next. And things are looking pretty good. I didn't measure the width of the shock mounts, and honestly, that was the least bit of my concern. I had a good feeling I was going to have to hack those off and weld new ones on anyways, which that's the case because these are far too wide. You can see they're almost hitting the U-bolts there, and I had to torch the one off of that side to make, where's my hand going? Hard to see my hand in the camera. I had to torch that side off just so the U-bolt could fit. So that should be a fun project, but I have a new toy I ordered that I think is going to help a lot, but you'll see that in probably a couple weeks. Let's get that U-joint on, and then if everything looks good there, we're going to start working on the disc brake conversion. I am so excited. Let's get back to it. My dude, I'm pretty excited. The U-joint bolted right up. I didn't think it was going to be an issue, but it's nice to see that bolted up. Everything's rough fit. Now it is for the moment that you may have been waiting for. Maybe, sure. We get to put something cool on the truck. We are going to fit the disc brake kit up to make sure this is good to go before I take this thing back apart again. So I'm going to dig through the boxes really quickly and make sure I know exactly what's for the rear and what's for the front. And I'm guessing I'm going to have to pull the rear axles on this thing, which that's fine because I want to open up the rear diff cover anyways to see what this thing looks like on the inside. Supposedly it has low miles. I'm pretty hopeful that turns out to be true. But right now I'm on cloud 9 because this thing bolted right up. I thought it was going to be way more work to swap this. I thought I was going to have to get fab crazy on this thing, which I love, but I have a really tight deadline on this truck. Only thing I have to weld is the rear shock, is the shock mounts, which I'm totally cool with that. That's easy peasies. Did I say easy peasies? I'm going to get locked off in the tripod, go through this box of parts, and we'll get ripping.
Here's a beautiful montage of me fighting the same bolt for well over an hour. Everything looks so fast and easy when it's boiled down in a 20-minute video though.
I did it again. We're filmed an entire monologue with no microphone on. I'll check again. We're good to go. Man, that is like the soundtrack to this entire build. I'll tell you what, that rear diff cover removal really kicked my ass. That took every ounce of ingenuity I had to get the bolts out of there. Like I always say, I'd rather have experience than tools, and that was one of those scenarios where I knew exactly what to do with bolts that were seized into a rear end housing. It was still a pain in the ass. Upon initial inspection, the rear end looks pretty good. It's definitely not a super low mileage rear end like I was hoping. And that being said, it was of a good value for the price I paid. But we're going to hit this first thing in the morning. We're going to get the axles pulled out, and we will get these disc brakes mocked up.
Now it's time to remove the spider gear retaining pin and the axle C-clip so we can get those axles pulled out.
I've been hammering away this morning, got a lot done. I already got the, where are they? Can never find my hand in the camera. I got the C-clips, remove the C-clips, pull the rear axles. They're in pretty good shape. I don't see a lot of wear on the bearing surface, which is nice. This rear housing is going to need a ton of cleanup though. It sat outside for a little bit, but it's in pretty good shape, all things considered. One little handy trick with axles that I'll show you is if you have drums or probably even an old rotor that they'd fit into, you can make an axle stand. It's going to be pretty hard for them to fall over there and shatter the shaft, and you really don't want to store hardened things like camshafts, axle shafts, where they can sit there and bow, because they will get a bow in them. Next on the docket, I'm going to be pulling these. I'm going to pull the backing plates off of the drum brakes to get ready to mock up the disc brakes. I'll get you locked off. We'll start heating our nuts and get these things off here. Backing plates are off. That went surprisingly smooth. I'm gonna take a wire wheel, clean up the mounting surface. That way the new disc brake kit sits nice and clean in there. As I said, I have a ton of cleanup to do on this axle. This is just a mock-up, so bear with me. I wanna make sure everything's gonna work before I put any work into cleaning up this rear end. So yeah, it's wire time. Both flanges are cleaned up on both sides. I'm going to get the caliper bracket mounted. We'll get the axles back in. And I think at that point we can put the rotor on and bolt up the caliper. Again, this is just a mock-up. I'm not going to be torquing anything down. I'm just trying to make sure everything's going to play nicely together. Think it's gonna be a long, long time before I get these brakes on. Doody doody doo 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 boo. Got the brackets all nice and snug on both sides. Now when you're fitting up and mocking up new parts and new hardware, just take your time. Don't rush it. A younger version of myself would have just hammered this with an impact, and that's fine. Most of the time it works out, but you can snap bolts pretty easily, booger up threads, and you just don't want to do that when you're taking parts on and off a few times. Man, these brackets look sweet. Look at those things. Tell you what, nothing motivates me more on a project than slapping on new parts. Even if I have to take it off again, this just gets me pumped seeing new shiny metal on here. Anyway, it's time to slide the axles back in, get the clips in, all that gobbledygook, and then we get to put the rotors on, the calipers on, and man, I'm freaking pumped about this. All right, let's get the smelly, nasty stuff out of the way, and then get back to the shiny stuff. Axle shafts are back in. I put the rear diff cover on just to keep my kids out of there. There's a lot of nasty bits in there. I don't need their little paws clawing in there. And it is rotor time, my friend. Nothing's as simple as it seems to be, and this kit is no different. I've got to machine down, and by machine I mean grind, the shims that are in here, these little spacers, just so the caliper aligns properly on the rotor. This is something that needs to be very delicate and precise, so I'm going to take my time, take this off, and grind those down to the exact thickness they need to be. I'm going to take a preliminary measurement of the spacer before I grind it, just so I know how much I'm taking off. This is going to be kind of tedious, but I'll try to show you exactly what I'm doing. All right, I'm going to take these calipers on and off about 50 times, but there's no better time than now to do it. Both sides have a disc brake now. Oh man, these things look freaking awesome. I love this. That was a super tedious process of grinding down all the spacers so everything fits just right. What you're looking for is you want to have free movement in the brake pads. You want to be able to wiggle both sides. Also check the brake pad clearance against the hat of the rotor. Remember, this is an aftermarket bolt-in kit. They made a ton of these 10 and 12 bolts that this kit will bolt to, and the flanges could be slightly different. So just go into it knowing it's going to take a little finessing, a little massaging, a little finessing, and just sit down and do it right the first time. I'm pretty happy with all the mock-up we've done in this part of the video. I'm going to leave you right here. This is where we're going to cap this video off. As always, I'm Jim Murphy. The channel's You Break It, You Fix It. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, do all the things you're supposed to do, and please hit me up in the comments. I love to hear from you guys. I love it when people add stuff that I don't know or mistakes that I've made down below, because that helps people out that are watching this. I don't have too big of an ego to admit that I don't know everything, so it's so helpful when people drop comments below that just add value to each of these videos. You're already doing that, and I really appreciate that. Thank you. And that's it for me, and I'll catch you in another video. Oh, I think it's gonna be a long, long time. Touchdown.